Hello, today we're continuing with running with the horses. Yesterday we finished on this page where they're getting ready to leave and Nina is insisting on riding the old cab horse Zelda. Carl led the way out of the palace with Zelda following close behind. Nina clung on desperately, but as they skidded around the first corner, her satchel skewed across her shoulders, dragging her off balance. She cried out, slipping down towards the cobblestones until Victor reached across and pulled her up. "Hold on to her mane," he shouted, taking the satchel from her shoulders. "Don't let go." Sirens wailed and burning buildings lit the way as the horses raced through the smoky darkness. Minutes later they reached the park where Nina had once ridden ponies and played with her friends. "We'll cross here," Carl called out. Nina looked at the hedge in front of them but couldn't see a gateway. "We have to jump," her father yelled. He cantered across the grass and the white horses floated like angels over the hedge. Nina followed him, terrified. She closed her eyes, expecting Nina to crash, but the old horse jumped the hedge easily. They galloped through the park, then raced down the curving boulevard that led out of the city. Nina crouched low as the horses sped along the streets, their hooves clattering on the cobblestones. Suddenly Zelda slammed into the stallions as they skidded to a halt in front of her. "We're trapped," said Carl. A huge pile of rubble was blocking the street. Nina could see the fear on his face. She twisted her fingers through Zelda's mane to stop her hands shaking. Her father reached over and tied the lead rope to make reins and kissed Nina on the cheek. "Are you all right on that horse?" he asked, "or do you want to ride with me?" Just as Nina shook her head, Zelda turned and trotted towards a narrow alley. Nina tugged on the reins, but the horse ignored her. "Come back, Nina," Victor called, starting to chase after them. The old mare galloped faster, shooting down the lane so quickly that it took all Nina's strength to hold on. She could hear her father shouting behind her. Zelda hurtled through the dark streets as if she knew the way. Abruptly they emerged onto a wide road and Zelda slowed to a walk. The chaos was behind them. "I'm sorry, Papa," Nina said. "I couldn't stop her." "No," Victor replied. "You've done well. This road will take us out of the city." Carl pointed to the distant mountains, shining blue under the full moon. "That's where we're headed," he said. "We will be safe on the other side." It was after midnight when they finally reached the foothills of the mountains and stopped to rest. Nina's hands were cramped and her legs hurt. Without a saddle to sit on, the skin inside her knees had rubbed raw. When Victor helped her down from Zelda, Nina turned in his arms to look back at the city and gasped. The sky above the buildings was glowing red as if everything was on fire. Victor bandaged Nina's legs and gave her a drink. Carl saddled Zelda and put the spare bridle on her, then spread out a rug and unwrapped some bread and cheese. Nina climbed onto her father's lap and rested against him while she ate. After a while they sat out again, the horses moving slowly up the trail into the mountains. Nina's saddle felt like an armchair, and she dozed on and off as they rode through the night. She woke as dawn was breaking. It was a cold, clear morning, and the sun shone in stripes through the trees. Nina moved carefully so the branches didn't scrape Nina's legs. Nina noticed that the old mare was already lagging behind the stallions. "I hope you can keep up," she said, and Zelda nickered softly as if she understood. They kept climbing upwards through the forest all morning. "The trees will hide us," said Victor as a plane buzzed overhead, "but we won't be safe until we cross the border." As they rode, Carl told Nina how he had made this journey many times as a young man, taking sheep to summer pasture in the mountains. "The highest pass marks the border," he said. "That's when I will leave you and return to my family." Nina was silent, but a shadow of worry settled on her. She had thought Carl would be riding with them all the way. At noon the riders came to a noisy stream. "Let's stop here and rest," said Carl. They unsaddled the horses and Victor laid bread, cheese and apples out on a rug. After they had eaten, Nina sat on the grass and opened her satchel. She found her little blue horse and buttoned it into her pocket. The rushing water was like a lullaby and Nina soon fell asleep while the horses grazed around her. When she woke, daylight was fading and the clearing flickered with tiny birds. Her father was standing with Zelda, hand feeding her. "She doesn't want to eat," he said. "It's a bad sign in an old horse, Nina." Perhaps Zelda was too old for such a hard journey, thought Nina. She bit her lip and led Zelda to the stream, where the horse drank deeply and picked at the watergrass. "Come on, girl," Nina whispered. "Please be strong." When it was time to go, Carl saddled the old mare and helped Nina climb onto Zelda's back. "We will ride through the night again," he said. "Later, when we cross the ravine, a village overlooks the bridge. There may be soldiers, but the dark will hide us." Nina rode behind her father and tried not to think about the soldiers. "How long until we reach the farm, Papa?" she asked. "We should arrive tomorrow," he said. "There is still a long way to go." As night closed around them, Victor told Nina stories about her mother that she had never heard before. When he talked about Anna and her dappled greys, Nina could almost feel her mother riding with them. Late that night, they rode out of the forest. The air felt sharp and the carpet of pine needles gave way to stones that scraped and rattled under the horses' hooves. Nina strained her eyes in the dark and could just make out the snow-capped mountains. "Stay close now," Victor called. "We are nearing the bridge." A few lights twinkled in the village high above them. Nina could hear the roar of the river, which rose to a thunder as they approached. The moon was behind clouds and the ravine was in darkness. They would be riding blind onto the bridge. "I'll go first," Victor said. His white horses moved forward, but suddenly Zelda pushed past them. Nina screamed as she was almost thrown off. "Zelda, stop!" she cried, as the mare spun around with her ears back and her teeth bared. She struck out with her forelegs, driving the stallions back off the bridge. Nina clung on, terrified that she and Zelda would plunge over the edge and into the icy river far below. "Jump off her, Nina." Carl tried to grab the reins. Victor leapt from his horse and pulled her from the saddle. At that moment, the clouds parted and the moon lit the scene before them. Nina saw that the middle of the bridge had been completely blown away and a yawning hole gaped above the ravine. Far below, she could see the black river glinting in the moonlight. She shivered to think how close they had come to falling. They remounted and rode away from the ruined bridge. Under the trees, Carl reined in his horse. "I know another way," he told them. "It's a longer track, but it will get us to the pass." As they went on, Nina patted Zelda with a shaky hand. That black river stayed in Nina's mind as she rode through the rest of the second night. Dawn broke slowly to a heavy grey sky. Nina's hands were so numb with cold she could hardly hold the reins. Up here in the high mountains, the ground was bare and rocky, and the horses picked their way through patches of snow. "We have to keep going," Victor said as he handed Nina a piece of bread. He gazed with concern at his tired daughter on her horse. They both looked exhausted. "Carl thinks a storm is coming. We must cross the pass before it arrives." As they climbed higher, the clouds closed around them. Zelda trudged on through the slush and ice. When the old horse kept slipping, Nina wanted to get off and walk, but Victor wouldn't let her. "You will be exhausted in no time if you walk," he said. "I can see Zelda is tired, but you will only feel like a feather on her back." They rode up through the thick mist for another hour. Then, all at once, the horses stepped out into dazzling sunlight. They were above the clouds now, on a snowy plain, with mountain peaks soaring on either side. Victor turned to Nina. "This is the pass," he said. "We are crossing the border." The stallions snorted in the sparkling sunlight, then broke into a trot. With their tails swishing silver, they pranced over the plain, sending up flurries of powdery snow. Zelda trailed behind with her head high and her ears pricked forward. Nina watched the white horses dancing ahead of her, dancing on top of the world. And I think we better stop here and we'll do the last bit tomorrow. So thank you for listening. Bye-bye.